I passionately disagree with what he's just said about the spending that was going on even before the pandemic. We're increasing funding for primary schools for £4,000 per pupil, £5,000 for secondary school pupils.
Well, that sounds great, except it's more bollocks. The Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies has said the government's spending on education before the pandemic would still leave spending per pupil no higher in 2022-23 than it was 13 years earlier when the Conservatives first took office. And the Prime Minister knows that. Under the Conservative government, we've seen the largest reduction in education spending for 40 years.
A massive investment in education across the board.
Well, let's take a look at that. Remember when the government announced that extra £560 million for school repairs and upgrades? The National Audit Office has estimated that England's schools need almost £7 billion right now just to meet the existing backlog of repairs and rebuilding work.
We're able to do it because we've been running a strong economy and we had the resources to do it because we hadn't followed the bankrupt policies of himself and the party opposite.
Before the pandemic, a record 60% of Britons living in poverty were in working families. About 1 in 8 in the economy were classified as working poor. The number of workers entering poverty was actually rising faster than employment. Real annual wages £800 a year lower than in 2010. We literally had the worst decade of wage growth since the Napoleonic War.
My honourable friend is absolutely right in what he says about home building and about the need for housing across the country, because you sometimes hear that, oh, this is a problem just mainly in London and the South East. Not at all, it's everywhere in the country, as he rightly says.
Under the Conservative government, house building in England is on course for its worst decade since the Second World War. Remember, the government announced it would invest in 180,000 new affordable homes. Well, tucked away in the small print, it says it's committed to build up to 180,000 new homes, which isn't the same as actually committing to build 180,000 new homes. In fact, it could build just one and say it's hit its target. And the government's added the proviso only if economic conditions allow. If all that's not bad enough, these homes are to be built over the next 6 years, and only about 40% of them will be let at affordable and social rent. That's only 72,000 homes over 6 years for almost 1.2 million households on social housing waiting lists right now.